Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Tim Harrigan. I have Bree on our call here. We're going to go over some of the Vibrant tests with you guys that we've been using for a while. In fact, Bree and I have been meaning to do these for a long time now. We've been using them in our practice quite often with patients. And so they're kind of complex. And that's why we use them, in fact, because most of the traditional methods for gathering information about our bodies, they're honestly just outdated. They're incomplete. For example, when somebody goes to get their thyroid check, Bree, most of the time people bring in blood work that's like maybe 2 or 3 items about the thyroid. That's just not enough information. That's enough information technically to prescribe something to that person. It's not enough information for somebody to address the cause of fixing whatever that thing around the thyroid is causing, though. It's a complex process. So these tests are kind of overwhelming to some people, but there's technically nothing simple about the human body, right? We tell our patients every day that there's every second in our bodies are incredible. I mean, every second our brain is controlling 30,000 billion chemical reactions. Every second that happens, 30,000 billion, 30,000 billion. So when you understand that, you kind of realize how stupid we are actually, right? When we think we understand what's going on in the human body, we don't have a clue. Our brains can't even comprehend what happens in 1 second in our human bodies. So one of the things that we've gotten good at with helping people is, testing, not guessing, because similar to a headache, a thyroid issue, a low back issue, a heart issue, there's hundreds of contributing factors to that symptom. Or hundreds of different causes for that one symptom. So if somebody gets a headache, I don't know if it's because they're dehydrated, or if it's because of a hormonal issue, or it's because of tight muscle in their neck, or it's because of a micronutrient deficiency, or because of this and that. It could be a brain tumor, right? But it'd be silly for us to assume that every person that comes in with a headache has a brain tumor. Well, that doesn't make sense. But the point is, there's hundreds of reasons that contribute to this thing that I call a headache. So without testing, we're treating symptoms. And that's not what I want to do with my health. That's not what I want to do with my family's health. We want to test, not guess, but the body's complex at the same time. So going for a yearly physical, we actually have a video on this. That's one of my pet peeves. I'm not saying don't go for a yearly physical, but when you go in once a year and have 20 to 30 things tested in your body, in your blood, most of those tests are designed for prescriptions, unfortunately. They're not designed to address the cause of a problem. So you go in, I get the 30 blood measurements, my cholesterol, my blood sugar, all those really basic things. They listen to my lungs, my hearts. And then, the doctor sends me home and says, you're healthy, come back next year. So we're just sitting around waiting for things to happen. I'm waiting for my heart attack to finally occur, or I'm waiting for, the big C word diagnosis, or I'm waiting for my headaches to be there for years to finally do something. So what I've done with myself and what we try to teach patients, it works incredibly well. I haven't had a prescription in my life in over 25 years. So you guys help me with this, but I actually get a lot of labs done on myself through different labs, mostly Vibrant. Every quarter, every 3 to 4 months, I literally measure hundreds of things in my body. Not because I'm sick, not because I have certain symptoms, but because I would have no clue what my Epstein-Barr numbers are, right, until I get really sick if I don't monitor those at least occasionally. So if I can measure thousands of different things in my body today, what is 30 things once a year going to tell me about myself? Virtually nothing. So what we're doing is waiting for symptoms to occur, which at that point, again, the headache has hundreds of causes. The thyroid issue has hundreds of environmental causes, stress, adrenal fatigue, all those types of things. So your testing that we use is incredible. And it's comprehensive. So we're going to go over a bunch of the different tests here, little chunks, just a few minutes each, to kind of guide you guys to see, why would we use this test? What is getting tested? Who would we use this test on? For what reasons we might use it? And then some of the traditional methods that somebody else might use instead. But I love you guys because it's so comprehensive. It's kind of a user-friendly approach. You guys print out incredible reports based on what the tests are. You're not just simply saying what's high and low all the time. It's more information about my body so I can actually learn and address that stuff in a proactive manner versus, again, waiting for things to get really bad. Then we start doing investigative tests. Maybe after I get diagnosed with lupus or whatever it is, we want to be proactive and not just wait for those things to develop. So let's get into some of these tests now. So let's get into the cardiovascular tests that we've learned about through Vibrance. The first one is a cardiac panel. Most people get traditionally their cholesterol checked, maybe some other lipids in their body, CBC, some liver enzymes and things like that. But there's so much more involved with our cardiac health, which is the number one killer. So I recommend this test to everybody. I don't care what age they are. We need to start monitoring this stuff so I can see over time, are these numbers getting worse or better or staying neutral over time versus waiting until they're really bad, right? So the first symptom of heart disease is usually the heart attack itself. So these proactive tests are priceless, to be honest. I mean, the first symptom of heart disease is the heart attack, and half the people don't even live through that first heart attack they have. So the cardiac panel is something we recommend to people. It's much more comprehensive than just simple cholesterol levels that we might get done once a year. It's going to test for ApoB and all these other markers that are important to keep track of, but also a Cardiax panel. So we have a cardiac panel and a Cardiax, AX, that is more of the genetic kind of potential, the tendencies that we might have too. So Bree, I recommend to our patients doing maybe the cardiac panel at least once a year. Maybe if we're working on something and they're exercising, eating differently, let's maybe do it sooner. Let's maybe do it every 4 to 6 months to keep track. How are those numbers being influenced over time with these lifestyle changes? And then the cardiacs, I usually recommend kind of just one time initially, because that's going to tell us some of the genetic potential. If I have some genetic markers that tell me I have tendencies towards certain things and it runs in my family, I need to be even more proactive because I have a stronger tendency than somebody that doesn't have that genetic marker. So can you tell us what's in the cardiac panel exactly?
Yeah, so in the cardiac panel, we do have several of the markers. Well, all of the markers in the panel are listed here. And like you mentioned before, this is definitely much more extensive than a basic lipid panel. That's really what the traditional medical model is using to assess patients' cardiovascular risk. It has been proven through various research studies that, just looking at a lipid panel itself, and lipids would be like your LDL and your HDL and your triglycerides and overall cholesterol numbers, those can be a little bit misleading. You can find someone that has a relatively good cholesterol, and how many times have we heard where a patient says, well, I went to the doctor, like you said before, went to the doctor, all my cholesterol is good, lipids are great, doc says my heart looks great, and then 2 weeks later they have a heart attack. There's definitely other things that can be assessed to really get a much better idea of underlying risk factors. So like you mentioned, the genetics, if you're predisposed, that's a great way to start. But we also look at other things. We break down the cholesterol to give the provider a better idea of truer risk of heart attack and stroke. So we look at the type of cholesterol that someone has, the size of cholesterol particle, all of those things matter, and they can increase your risk. So we really are able to better really assess risk for someone. We also look at inflammatory markers. We know nowadays that so many illnesses and chronic diseases are really motivated and can continue to develop because of inflammation. And so we look at a lot of those inflammatory markers like homocysteine and oxidized LDL and MPO. Those things are definitely going to give you as the medical provider a much better idea of someone's true risk for heart disease.
Right. And I urge people to, some of these names obviously are going to be new to people. They don't recognize, we all know HDL and LDL. We've just been conditioned to look at those. But I urge you to look these up. When you're looking at true research and PubMed articles showing what's important for my heart risk factors, these are those things. We're just not taught that in the mainstream. So reach out to us. We can send you a list of all these things that are tested, or look on our e-commerce site and start looking up some of these. You'll see a lot of these health experts, these, more advanced cardiologists talking about these numbers, apolipoprotein A1, these are markers that are so much more important to monitor other than the normal cholesterol, HDL and LDL numbers. So we can give you that list to look some of those up. Just reach out to us. So the Cardiax panel, AX, what is that designed for, and what is it testing exactly?
Yes. So our Cardiax panel was actually co-created with Dr. Mark Houston, who is a cardiologist at the Hypertension Clinic in Tennessee. And what he was explaining to us is that as a cardiologist, he obviously sees a lot of patients that come in with all sorts of cardiac ailments, but specifically with hypertension, high cholesterol. And many of these patients are on tons of medications. So they come in a whole list of 10, 15 different medications, and their symptoms still are not controlled. So these people still have high blood pressure. They still have increased risk for heart attack and stroke. They still have AFib, all these other things. And so he really wanted to develop a test that could look at someone's genetics and actually help determine what types of treatments would be best for each person based on those genetics. So he's really the one that helped us create this test. And that's really the whole point of it is, again, if we know your genetics, we know what you're more predisposed to. We also know how your body genetically works. That's going to help us know what is a better course of treatment for you. It's not the whole one size fits all. Everybody gets the same treatment protocol. You know that better than anyone, Dr. Tim. Everyone is super individualized. And this definitely helps individualize and customize whatever treatment that patient needs, in hopes to really get better outcomes with fewer medications, if we can. So that's really the point of this test here.
Absolutely. And so I also want to make note to people that our genetics are not death sentences. So we simply do this not to scare the heck out of you. Some people look at this
Right.
and they say, oh my gosh, I have a couple of these. I'm going to die of a heart attack soon. It's not what it's telling us. It's a tendency. So people don't realize that genetic markers, so we stopped doing a lot of more thorough genetic testing years ago. This is great for the cardiovascular stuff, but I stopped doing all the different, prostate cancer, breast cancer genes. It just scares people. And if you search hard enough, we're going to find bad genes in every human walking the earth. So that's not the goal. I don't care what bad genes you have. You have them, I have them, we all have them. But those genes are responding to our environment. Either way, I need to eat healthier. I need to exercise better. I need to work on my toxicities. I need to work on my deficiencies, and I need to work on my imbalances so that whatever bad genes I have, they don't get turned on like a light switch. That's what researchers have shown. Genetics are light switches. If you treat your body like garbage, you're more likely to turn those bad light switches on. So this is more not to scare you. It's a tendency. Tendencies can always be influenced by the environment, though. So like I said, we usually do this test, Bree, initially with somebody as we go through this journey with them of information about their cardiovascular system. Remember, we're not treating heart disease. This is information. If I have this information about myself, obviously I'm going to take better care of myself because I'm like, well, I have two tendencies here. I need to eat a little healthier than my mom and dad did. I need to do this a little better. It's a motivator. It should be a motivator, not a scare tactic, because everything can be influenced. So usually the Cardiax is initially, once we find out those tendencies, that's great. We know them now. And then we can follow up with the cardiac panel to measure those 12 to 15 other items that are much more thorough than just the general cholesterol panel. So reach out to us if you want more information on these tests and exactly what tests we're doing with this process here.